In just a few months, hundreds of thousands of Filipino workers will be forced to leave the place they once called their second home. People who carried dreams and hopes in their hearts are now facing an unprecedented crisis. Amid the storm of global change, 2025 is turning into a true nightmare for countless overseas Filipino workers. The doors that once stood wide open are now slowly closing. From the glittering cities of the Middle East, where the lights barely dimmed after the World Cup, to the high-tech factories of East Asia, where machines and automation are replacing human labor, 10 major countries are pushing hundreds of thousands of Filipinos into a dead end, losing jobs, losing their livelihoods, and being forced to return home with no clear future ahead. More than 300,000 Filipino workers now face an uncertain tomorrow. And the question that the whole world is asking is, what will happen next? In today's episode, Pinoy Global Explorer takes you through the list of 10 countries expelling Filipino workers in 2025 and uncovers the real reasons behind the decisions that have changed millions of lives. And trust me, the country at the top of this list will leave you speechless. Let's begin this journey of discovery right now. 10. Qatar. After more than a decade abroad, a Filipino man is forced to leave the place he once called his second home. And all of it because of a sporting event that ended 3 years ago. Antonio "Tony" Ramos always believed that Qatar would be the place where he'd work until retirement. For over 12 years, he served as a maintenance technician at a major hotel in Doha, witnessing the country's remarkable transformation, especially during the vibrant years leading up to the 2022 World Cup. But when the grand festival of football ended, everything changed, and not in the way Tony had hoped. The massive construction projects that once filled the skyline came to a halt. Services were reduced, and many companies began cutting back on hiring foreign workers, particularly Filipinos. When Tony's contract expired, he had no choice but to return home, thinking it would only be a short break before heading back to Qatar. But soon he realized that door had truly closed. The Qatari government not only reduced job opportunities, but also imposed a ban on hiring Filipino workers, leaving thousands like Tony unable to return, even after dedicating years of their lives to the country. Tony tried reaching out to his former employer, to old contacts in Doha, but everywhere he turned, he was met with the same cold reply: "We're no longer hiring Filipino workers." Back in Manila, Tony had to face a harsh reality. He had spent more than a decade working in Qatar, but now he returned home with nothing but his two hands. His friends, those who once shared the same dreams abroad, fared no better. Many had sold their homes in the Philippines, planning to settle long-term in Qatar, but were now forced to start over from zero. Some tried moving to the UAE or Saudi Arabia, but stricter immigration policies made every path narrower. One afternoon, as Tony stood in front of his small house, seeing the smiles of his wife and children after so many years apart, he realized it was time to let go of the past. Qatar had once been a land of promise, but now it was nothing more than a bittersweet memory. His life had to begin again, right here, in his own homeland. And though the road ahead wouldn't be easy, he chose to keep moving forward. Because Filipinos, no matter where they go, always find the strength to rise again after every storm. 9. United Arab Emirates, UAE. After 8 years of working abroad, a Filipino woman suddenly receives devastating news. The job she had dedicated nearly a decade to disappeared overnight. Janine Lopez always believed Dubai would be where she built her future. For 8 years, she worked at a large shopping mall, becoming one of its top sales employees. With a steady income, she regularly sent money to her parents in Cebu and saved every peso to fulfill her dream, to bring her family to live with her. But now, everything is changing faster than ever. The UAE government recently passed a new policy that, eliminated over 85,000 jobs in retail and administrative sectors fields, where Filipinos like Janine make up a large part of the workforce. The Emiratization policy, which prioritizes local citizens, left tens of thousands of foreign workers unemployed overnight. When Janine received her termination notice, she could hardly believe her eyes. "I've given almost 10 years to this company. I've worked hard, never missed a deadline, never complained. And now I'm being replaced just because I'm not a citizen?" she said, holding back tears. But losing her job was only the beginning. The UAE also tightened its family visa regulations, making it difficult for many foreign workers to bring loved ones over. Janine once dreamed of bringing her younger brother to Dubai for college, but under the new policies, that dream now feels impossibly far away. Her Filipino colleagues are facing the same fate. Some are trying to move to nearby countries like Qatar or Saudi Arabia, but opportunities are scarce. Others have accepted the painful decision to return home, unsure of what awaits them next. As Janine packed up her desk on her last day, an emptiness filled her heart. She once believed Dubai would be where her career thrived, where her dreams came true. But now, she's forced to leave, not because of failure or lack of skill, but because she doesn't hold the right passport. Standing before the towering glass building where she spent the best years of her youth, Janine took a deep breath. Behind her were 8 years of hard work and sacrifice. Ahead of her, an uncertain road. Yet no matter where that road leads, she knows she must keep walking for her family, for her dreams, and for the unshakable belief that Filipinos, no matter where they are, will always find a way to stand tall and start again. 8. Saudi Arabia. Raymond de la Cruz never imagined that one day he would have to leave Saudi Arabia, the place he had called his second home for more than a decade. He arrived with nothing but determination, starting as a retail employee in a small shop in Riyadh. He endured the scorching heat and the exhausting long hours, but it was all worth it each time he sent money home to his family in Pampanga. For him, every sacrifice was an investment in a better future. But now, that dream is fading away. The Saudization policy, which prioritizes employment for Saudi citizens, has pushed tens of thousands of foreign workers like Raymond to the sidelines. The government has banned foreign labor in 12 key sectors, including retail, accounting, human resources, and healthcare. That means workers like him no longer have opportunities to switch careers or remain in the country legally. Life in Saudi Arabia has also become increasingly expensive. The government has imposed new taxes and fees, residence permits, additional charges for dependents, and other costs that weigh heavily on migrant workers. Raymond once dreamed of bringing his wife to live with him, but that plan now feels like a distant fantasy. "Even if I could stay," he said with a heavy heart, "these new taxes would leave me with nothing to save." Beyond the financial strain, foreign workers are also facing tighter social restrictions. Filipino community gatherings, once a vital source of comfort and belonging, are now closely monitored. Raymond misses the weekend spent playing basketball with friends, sharing homemade adobo, and telling stories from back home. Now even those simple joys have become a luxury. One by one, his friends are leaving. Some have returned to the Philippines, while others are trying their luck in the UAE and Canada. Raymond knows his turn will come soon. But leaving means starting over, and that's never easy. When he received his termination notice, he stood silently, gazing at the Riyadh skyline. The towers that once glowed as symbols of Saudi Arabia's prosperity now only filled him with emptiness. Behind their dazzling lights, the doors once open to foreign workers were quietly closing. Amid the city's bright lights, Raymond realized he was stepping into a new chapter, one uncertain, but still waiting to be written. And like countless other Filipinos before him, he reminded himself that no matter how rough the road ahead may be, he will keep moving forward for his family, for his resilience, and for the unbreakable spirit of Filipinos who never give up. 7. Bahrain. For more than 10 years, Arnel Mendoza built his life in Bahrain. Working for a construction company in Manama, he spent his days under the scorching desert sun with a single goal in mind: to earn enough to bring his wife and children to live with him. For Arnel, Bahrain wasn't just a workplace. It was a second home, a place where he once believed his family could finally settle for good. But everything changed. The Bahraini government began tightening its immigration policies, gradually phasing out foreign workers, restricting property ownership, and most devastating of all, revoking family visas. For people like Arnel, it felt like a sentence. After more than a decade of hard work, he received the news that his wife and children's visas would no longer be renewed. "We were settled here. My kids were studying at a local school. My wife had a small job helping with our expenses. Now they're forcing us to leave, taking away everything we've worked so hard to build," Arnel said, his voice breaking. The new regulations didn't stop there. Bahrain also restricted foreign ownership of homes and businesses. Many Filipinos who had invested in small restaurants, shops, or houses suddenly found themselves forced to sell at a loss, or worse, lose everything. Years of savings and sacrifice vanished almost overnight. Arnel's friends faced the same struggles. Some were laid off without warning. Others tried moving to nearby Middle Eastern countries, but tightening immigration laws across the region left almost no doors open. On the day his wife and children left Bahrain, Arnel stood at the airport, his heart heavy. As the boarding call echoed through the terminal, he watched them disappear beyond the security gates, a sight that felt like a deep wound in his soul. He didn't know how much longer he could stay, but he understood that the life he had built in this foreign land was no longer secure. Yet in Arnel's eyes, a small glimmer of hope remained that one day he would be reunited with his family, somewhere they could truly call home. And like countless other Filipinos, he held on to one enduring truth: no matter how much life changes, the heart of an overseas Filipino will always find its way back home to where it all began. 6. Taiwan. For 7 years, Mark Villanueva worked tirelessly in Taiwan, at an electronics manufacturing plant in Hsinchu, hoping to build a stable future and send money home to support his family every month. The job was tough, but to him, it was the path toward a better life for his aging parents and 2 younger siblings. Then came the announcement. The company was cutting down its foreign workforce, not because of performance, but due to new immigration policies and a sweeping shift toward automation. Stricter skill assessments and higher technical standards were introduced, and those who failed to meet the new criteria would have their contracts terminated and, in some cases, face immediate deportation. Despite his years of experience, Mark couldn't meet the new requirements. When he received the result marked below standard, it felt like the ground beneath him had disappeared. "I've worked here for 7 years. I know every detail of my job. How can they say I'm not qualified?" he said, his voice heavy with disbelief. With no other choice, Mark began packing his bags to return to the Philippines. He knew that finding work back home would be difficult. "I've gotten used to life in Taiwan. When I go back, I don't know what I'll do. Everything's changing too fast," he sighed. Across Taiwan, many Filipino workers are feeling the same pressure. They're not only facing job losses but also dealing with rising placement fees, tighter control from employment agencies, and limited access to social services. At the same time, the Taiwanese government has announced plans to ease some recruitment rules to attract more international professionals, but these changes mainly target high-tech and specialized fields, offering little help to blue-collar workers like Mark. As the plane lifted off from Taoyuan, Mark looked down at the city, its glowing lights, tall buildings, and familiar streets fading beneath the clouds. Those 7 years weren't meaningless, but they couldn't last forever. He knew it was time to move forward, to keep fighting for himself and for his family, no matter how uncertain the road ahead might be. 5. Kuwait. For over 15 years, Hector Ramirez lived and worked in Kuwait. From a young man who left home with nothing, he slowly built a life for himself as a mechanic in a small auto repair shop in Kuwait City. The salary wasn't high, but it was steady enough to support his wife and children in Manila, enough to dream that one day, his whole family could be together again. But now, everything he's built is on the verge of collapse. In early 2025, the Kuwaiti government launched the Kuwaitization campaign, a policy aimed at reducing the number of foreign workers, especially those over 40. The official goal is to create more jobs for Kuwaiti citizens and lessen dependence on migrant labor. But in reality, this policy is forcing tens of thousands of foreign workers, including many Filipinos, to lose their jobs and return home. The new regulations are stricter than ever. Foreign workers whose visas expire can only renew them once. Anyone who overstays will face heavy fines or even a lifetime ban from re-entry. For people like Hector, it feels like a cruel verdict. "I've spent almost half my life here," he said softly. "And now, just because I'm over 40, they treat me like I'm worthless." Hector isn't alone. Many of his fellow Filipinos are going through the same ordeal. Some were abruptly terminated without time to pack their things. Others were deported just days after receiving notice. At Kuwait International Airport, long lines of Filipino workers wait for flights home. Their faces weary, their eyes filled with worry. Some cry quietly. Others hold tightly to their suitcases, carrying the last remnants of their lives abroad. Holding his ticket, Hector feels a deep heaviness in his heart. He doesn't know what awaits him back in Manila, where jobs are scarce, but family responsibilities never end. Yet he also knows there's no other choice. "I can't stay, but I can't go home empty-handed forever," he murmurs. Hector's story is not unique. Thousands of Filipino workers have become casualties of Kuwait's tightening immigration rules. Many of them have spent decades contributing to the country's economy, only to be forced out without even a chance to say goodbye. Still, amid the sadness and separation, one thing remains: the enduring resilience of the Filipino spirit. As Hector steps onto the plane, he whispers to himself, "I may have lost my job, but I will never lose hope." 4. Japan. Angela Reyes once believed Japan would be the place where she could build a stable and dignified future. She came to Osaka under the Care Worker Training Program, one of the joint initiatives between Japan and the Philippines to address the country's growing shortage of elderly care workers. The job was far from easy: long shifts, sleepless nights, and the constant struggle with language and cultural barriers. But for Angela, every smile and word of gratitude from the elderly she cared for made it all worth it. She was proud to help others while supporting her mother and 2 younger siblings back home. Then, in early 2025, the Japanese government announced the termination of the Care Worker Training Program, citing workforce restructuring and automation in the healthcare and welfare sectors. The decision threw thousands of Filipino workers into uncertainty. Those under trainee status, like Angela, would not have their contracts renewed unless they could transition to a specified skilled worker visa, a nearly impossible task for most, as it required passing the demanding N3 Japanese language exam and obtaining strict technical certifications. At the same time, Japan's rising income taxes and living costs further reduced the take-home pay of foreign workers. With insurance fees and daily expenses climbing, the money Angela could send home grew smaller each month. When she received notice that she had only 6 months to switch visas or leave the country, she felt her world collapse. "I studied Japanese for years. I worked hard to adapt, to earn the trust of the people I cared for. And with just one announcement, everything vanished," she said, her voice trembling. Many of her co-workers decided to leave. Some moved to Taiwan or Canada. Others returned to the Philippines. But for Angela, Leaving Japan meant more than losing a job, it meant losing a place she had learned to call home. She sought help from consultation centers, trying every possible way to stay, but the rules kept tightening. Even the government's so-called specified skilled worker visa, meant to offer foreign workers a way forward, proved out of reach for most due to its high language and skill requirements. I worked so hard. I love my job. And now I have to leave just because the policy changed, Angela said as tears rolled down her cheeks. Angela's story mirrors what thousands of Filipino workers in Japan are going through. As the land of the rising sun gradually closes its doors to foreign labor, the very people who helped care for its aging society are being left behind. Yet amid the heartbreak and uncertainty, one thing remains unshaken: the resilience of the Filipino spirit. Whether Angela returns home or seeks a new beginning in another country, she knows her journey isn't over. Because wherever there is love, family, and hope, there will always be a place called home. 3. South Korea. 7 years ago, Jomar de la Cruz left the Philippines with a strong belief that South Korea would be the place where he could change his life. He arrived in Incheon under the E9 visa program, designed for low-skilled foreign workers. In an auto parts factory, he worked tirelessly, day after day, surrounded by the noise of machines and the heavy smell of oil. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it was steady enough to send money home to Pampanga, to support his parents, and pay for his 2 siblings' college tuition. For Jomar, that was his pride. But today, that dream is beginning to fade. Starting in early 25, the South Korean government began phasing out the E9 visa program, gradually reducing the number of low-skilled foreign workers. According to the Ministry of Labor, the goal is to create more jobs for Korean citizens and prepare for a fully automated industrial future. The policy has left tens of thousands of workers from the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand in uncertainty. Companies that once relied heavily on foreign labor are now forced to adapt. Many factories have switched to automated systems, while others are cutting staff or offering only short-term contracts. The news spread quickly, and Jomar heard it during a late-night shift. His heart sank. When the company officially announced that contracts for foreign workers would not be renewed, he knew his time in South Korea was coming to an end. To make things harder, the government tightened language and skill requirements. In the past, E9 workers only needed basic Korean communication skills. Now, they must pass TOPIK 2, an intermediate-level Korean proficiency test, along with specialized technical exams. For many Filipino workers, these new rules are nearly impossible. They have to work full-time while studying Korean at night, all while paying for expensive tests and certifications. Jomar tried his best. He attended evening language classes, memorized vocabulary, practiced every sentence. But when the visa renewal list was posted, his name wasn't there. I worked so hard. I gave everything to this company. And just because I'm not Korean, I have to leave, he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Some of Jomar's friends have already returned to the Philippines. Others are trying to move to Japan or Taiwan, where technical jobs are still available. He's considering his options too, but nothing seems clear. I don't want to go home empty-handed. But if I stay, there's no job for me either. My future is no longer mine to decide, he sighed. Jomar's story is not unique. As South Korea tightens its policies toward Filipino workers, the dream of a stable life in the land of morning calm is slowly slipping away. Yet amid the quiet tears and farewell flights at Incheon Airport, one thing remains unchanged: the resilience of the Filipino spirit. No matter where they go, Filipinos carry with them faith, gratitude, and the hope for a better tomorrow for themselves, their families, and the homeland they will always call home. 2. Hong Kong. After 8 years of working abroad, Maria Santos has come to think of Hong Kong as her second home. She works as a domestic helper for a middle-class family, cleaning, cooking, taking care of 2 children, and making sure the household runs smoothly. Every month, she faithfully sends money back to the Philippines to support her 3 children and her elderly parents in Bulacan. Life hasn't been easy, but it has been stable. She used to believe that with hard work and patience, she could stay here for many more years. But recent policy changes are slowly shattering that dream. By mid-2025, the Hong Kong government introduced a series of tighter regulations on foreign domestic workers. The new visa quota was reduced by more than 20% compared to the previous year, along with higher minimum income requirements for employers. This means that many middle-class families, once the main employers of Filipino helpers, can no longer afford to keep them. Maria's employer is also worried. If they can't prove their income meets the new standards, they'll have no choice but to let her go. I don't blame them. They're struggling too. But I honestly don't know where I'll go if my contract isn't renewed, Maria said, her voice trembling. On top of that, Hong Kong has introduced new housing standards for domestic workers. In the past, many helpers lived with their employers or rented small shared rooms. Now the rules require minimum living space and safety conditions. Meanwhile, rent prices have skyrocketed, while the basic monthly wage for domestic helpers remains at 4,870 Hong Kong dollars, barely enough to survive in one of the world's most expensive cities. Many are being forced to move farther away from the city center, endure longer commutes, or worse, return home. The Filipino community in Hong Kong, once one of the most vibrant and close-knit groups, is now filled with anxiety. Those still employed live with constant uncertainty, waiting for their contracts to expire. The unemployed are torn between returning home or seeking work in Singapore or Taiwan. Even those preparing to come to Hong Kong face longer visa processing times and stricter financial requirements from potential employers. Maria knows how fragile her life here is, that everything can change with just one government order. I've built my life here. I've raised my kids and built my future through this job. If I have to leave, I don't know how to start all over again, she said softly, her eyes gazing out toward Victoria Harbor, a place where so many Filipino dreams have once anchored. Maria's story is not hers alone. It echoes the voices of thousands of Filipino workers in Hong Kong. Every time policies change, they must learn to adapt, as they always have. And even though the future remains uncertain, one thing never changes: Filipinos never give up. Because behind every drop of sweat shed in a foreign land lies love for family and an unshakable faith in a brighter tomorrow. 1. Malaysia. For more than 6 years, Daniel Manalo worked at a shopping mall in Kuala Lumpur. To him, Malaysia once represented hope, a place where he could build a stable life and a brighter future. Every month, he sent money home to his wife and children in Cebu, helping them get by while saving for the dream of reuniting as a family. He had grown used to the city's rhythm, the chatter of shoppers, the blaring horns, and the long hours of work. But everything suddenly fell apart when the government introduced the Malaysia First policy, a move that left thousands of Filipino workers like Daniel jobless overnight. Announced in mid-2025, the policy aimed to protect local employment and reduce post-pandemic unemployment. It imposed strict limits on renewing and hiring foreign workers in industries like retail, services, restaurants, and hospitality sectors that had long relied on Filipino labor. The Ministry of Human Resources even required companies to prove that no Malaysian citizen was qualified for the position before they could apply to hire a foreign worker. When Daniel received the notice that his contract would not be renewed, he was stunned. His employer, who valued him deeply, could do nothing. "I've worked here for more than 6 years, contributing to this store's success bit by bit. And now I have to leave just because I'm not Malaysian," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. Thousands of other Filipino workers face the same fate. Many had already lost their jobs, while others waited anxiously for their contracts to expire. Even Malaysian business owners were struggling. They were forced to replace hardworking, skilled Filipino employees with local hires, many of whom were reluctant to take on low-paying or demanding jobs. Restaurant and hotel owners reported lower productivity and poorer service quality, but violating the hiring rules meant facing steep penalties. Amid the crisis, the Filipino community in Malaysia fell into deep uncertainty. Social media groups were flooded with job postings, pleas for help, and mutual aid campaigns. The Philippine government announced emergency repatriation and job replacement plans, but with so many affected, progress was slow. Daniel had only a few weeks left before his visa expired. He stood at a crossroads: try his luck in Singapore, Qatar, or Saudi Arabia, where some opportunities for foreign workers remained, or return to the Philippines and start over. Both paths seemed uncertain, yet there was no despair in his eyes. "I left home once to chase a future. If I have to, I'll do it again," he said with quiet determination. Daniel's story is more than his own. It echoes the struggles of thousands of Filipino workers in Malaysia, caught between hope and hardship. As policies shift and opportunities vanish, they may lose their jobs, but never their spirit. Because no matter where life takes them, Filipinos carry within them resilience, love for family, and the unshakable belief that every challenge is just another step towards something greater. From the Middle East to East Asia, hundreds of thousands of Filipino workers are being forced to leave the places they once called their second home. Each country has its own reasons, but the pain is the same: losing jobs, separation from loved ones, and the fear of an uncertain future. Yet amid all these challenges, one thing never changes: Filipinos never give up. They leave with courage and they return with hope, believing that tomorrow will always bring light. They don't just go abroad to earn a living, but to carry the Filipino spirit, resilient, compassionate, and proud to every corner of the world. Wherever they go, whatever they do, they remain the pride of their homeland. Because Filipinos are resilient, proud, and forever hopeful. This is Pinoy Global Explorer, where the stories of Filipinos are told with pride and heart.